One big debate I've seen online is whether Triple H was ever truly the guy in WWE. But putting bias aside, when we look at the numbers, Triple H's run as champion from 2002 to 2005 was undeniably a very low point for WWE. And that's what we're going to be looking into today. Instead of arguing with each other, let's look at the ratings, pay-per-view buy rates, and overall performance of the WWE product while Triple H was the face of the company. To do this, we need to go back to early 2002. And now real quickly, I just want to say this video isn't meant to be your typical recap of the Reign of Terror. This is more of an analytical video, but I want to set the stage and give context. So let's do a brief recap and then we'll examine the ratings and all the numbers and all that stuff. So we have to go back to early 2002. And during this time, WWE was entering a transitional period. The Attitude Era of the late 1990s had peaked with superstars like Stone Cold and The Rock, drawing massive ratings. But by 2002, those megastars were on their way out. The Rock went part-time, leaving for Hollywood. Austin walked out of the company after WrestleMania 18, and other big names like Brock Lesnar would soon depart or work reduced schedules. Into this void stepped Triple H, returning in January 2002 from a quad injury. As a long-tenured star who had built a solid reputation in the late 90s as a monster heel, Triple H initially received a thunderous babyface reaction upon his comeback. He even won the 2002 Royal Rumble and the Undisputed Championship from Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 18 that same year. But within months, WWE pivoted him back into the role of Raw's top villain, and from September 2002 onward, he was positioned as the dominant world champion on Raw. Like, Eric Bischoff literally just awarded him and gave him the World Heavyweight Championship in September 2002. I just want to make it clear, Triple H didn't win the title, it was just awarded to him. And from here, for the next 3 years, the game would rule Raw's main event scene with an iron fist. During this period, Triple H amassed 5 world championship reigns and headlined countless Raws and pay-per-views. He often opened Raw with a 15 to 20 minute promo, appeared in multiple backstage segments, and closed the show in the main event, making Raw feel at times like the Triple H show. He also formed the Evolution stable in 2003, alongside Ric Flair and rookies Randy Orton and Batista. On paper, Triple H was doing exactly what a top guy should, carrying the show in a time of turmoil and helping build new stars for the future. However, the real question is, did it work? Well, the answer, as supported by both fan opinion and business metrics from 2002 to 2005, is that Triple H's reign on top coincided with a notable slump for WWE's popularity. It was undeniably a low point. And while not all of WWE's struggles can be blamed on one man, and we'll discuss the other factors, don't worry, it's clear that Raw's audience got very bored under Triple H's tenure as champion. But everyone has an opinion, right? So let's put that aside, let's put personal opinions aside, and actually examine the numbers and analytics. As one of the most telling indicators of WWE's slump during the Reign of Terror is the television ratings for Monday Night Raw. After peaking in 1999 with TV ratings around the 5.9 range, Raw's viewership began falling in 2001 and got even worse from 2002 through 2004. By late 2002, Raw's weekly Nielsen ratings were routinely in the mid-3s, and each following year saw further declines. Now, one point I often see made to defend this decline is that this era also saw the loss of Austin, The Rock, and eventually even Brock Lesnar. And don't get me wrong, this definitely hurt ratings, but I mean, if Triple H is the draw that WWE has claimed he is, then he should have been able to carry the torch. I mean, The Rock, Austin, and Lesnar were all missing during Cena and Batista's rise, right? But they were still able to carry the business on their backs, especially Cena. He carried the torch and brought the company into a much stronger financial position over the next few years. So no, The Rock or Austin or Brock Lesnar leaving or going part-time is not a valid excuse. But let's talk about more data. It's telling that in the spring of 2005, when Triple H finally dropped the World Championship to Batista and took a several-month hiatus from TV, that Raw's ratings actually saw a rebound. They got better, with the average Raw rating rising slightly in 2005 compared to 2004, halting the decline somewhat. It's clear that Triple H was not not driving growth to the WWE audience during 2002 to 2004. The opposite actually occurred, as Raw lost a significant chunk of viewers. Only with the arrival of fresh main event talent, Batista, Cena, Orton, and a diminished on-screen role for Triple H did the trend start to stabilize and did things get better. But television ratings weren't the only metric that struggled. WWE's pay-per-view business similarly stagnated during this era, which overlaps heavily with Triple H's reign. The most stark example is WrestleMania 19 in March 2003, the biggest show of the year, which was heavily built around Triple H's title defense against Booker T. Despite a star-studded card, WrestleMania 19 only drew about 560,000 buys, making it the least bought WrestleMania in many years. And even outside of WrestleMania, many regular monthly pay-per-views from 2003 to 2004 underperformed compared to prior years. For instance, shows where Raw's main events were built around Triple H's feuds generally did pretty weak numbers compared to the past. Fans just weren't compelled to spend money on these shows, perhaps because they often anticipated a contrived ending or a foregone conclusion. As we'll discuss in a moment, Triple H's match finishes and booking during this era often left viewers unsatisfied, which is not a very great recipe for selling pay-per-views, right? On the merchandise front, Triple H's reign also wasn't really lighting up the charts. Typically, WWE's top stars like Austin, Rock, and later John Cena always move the most merchandise. During those stars' runs, WWE experienced an increase in merchandise sales. So the same should have happened with Triple H, right? Well, Triple H spent a large chunk of 02 to 05 as the face of the company, as we discussed, and there is no indication whatsoever that he was ever a merchandise powerhouse on the level of his peers. In fact, WWE's financial reports from that period indicate relatively flat merchandise sales per live event attendee. And I'm just saying, it wasn't bad, so I just want to make it clear, there's no data that says that Triple H was a bad merchandise seller, but data does show that there was no growth while Triple H was champion. It wasn't until John Cena's rise with his popular t-shirts, caps, and wristbands, and other dynamic characters in the mid-2000s that merchandise sales finally began climbing again. So by most accounts, Triple H's merch was never a top seller, certainly not enough to offset the loss of Austin or Rock's merchandise during that era. And I'm just saying, this is a fact supported by the numbers, it's not like my personal opinion. But also, if I were to get personal, aside from DX, can any one of you even remember anybody walking around with a Triple H shirt back in the day? Seriously, I'm not being a hater. DX shirts were very popular, but I don't know a single dude with a Triple H t-shirt. But yeah, this again underscores that although Triple H was positioned as the top star, he didn't necessarily drive fans to open their wallets as previous or future icons had. Moving on though, it would be unfair to paint Triple H's 02 to 05 run as all negative. One positive was the formation of the Evolution stable in 2002, which proved to be mutually beneficial for all involved. Triple H, recognizing the need for fresh blood in the main event scene, recruited Ric Flair and two relatively unknown prospects for the time, Randy Orton and Dave Batista. Billed as a metaphor for the past, present, and future of wrestling, Evolution dominated Raw storylines from 03 to early 05, and this significantly helped make this era of Raw less boring and added a ton to Triple H's reign. In turn, Batista and Orton benefited a ton from the rub of standing next to a top star. They slowly gained credibility by association, and Evolution's cool, mafia-like aura made Batista and Orton look really freaking cool. So it's only fair to acknowledge that Triple H was instrumental in elevating those two stars. But this doesn't change the fact that Triple H himself was not a very good champion. I was just being fair for a moment here and giving Hunter his flowers for putting over Randy and Batista. But I mean, if anything, you could argue that Evolution was the saving grace of Triple H's 02 to 05 run. I mean, without the faction and the future stars it produced, this period would have been insanely boring and unbearable. I mean, can you imagine the Reign of Terror, but without Ric Flair, Batista, or Randy? If anything, the stable was more mutually beneficial for all parties involved, including Triple H. Evolution made Raw more bearable for fans by introducing new faces into the mix, and eventually giving us those satisfying moments of Triple H getting his comeuppance at the hands of Batista or Orton. So while yes, Triple H helped create new stars during this time, I'd also argue that Batista and Orton somewhat carried Triple H's reign, just as much as Triple H carried them. Without Triple H, who knows if Randy would have gone on to become who he is today. But also without Evolution, Triple H would have been an even more boring champion. Now, one more thing I want to discuss is the actual roster during Hunter's reign. And this is more me being fair. Like, I don't want to be biased in this video, so it's only fair to make some arguments in favor of Hunter. And a big one is that some of Triple H's opponents at the time simply didn't pan out due to their own issues. Scott Steiner, for instance, was given a high-profile feud with Hunter in early 2003, but Steiner's physical condition was poor, and the matches were disasters, leaving WWE little choice but to keep the belt on Triple H. Goldberg was brought in later in 2003 to dethrone Triple H. Although he won the title, his one-year run in WWE was very underwhelming, if you guys remember, and he left after WrestleMania XX, with creative quickly putting the title back onto Hunter. Kevin Nash was also a potential candidate for a push, but he was injured, tearing his quad in the summer of 02. In short, some of the failure to create new stars during 02 to 04 falls on the talent themselves or circumstance. And don't get me wrong, Triple H was really boring during this era, yes, but WWE tried multiple people in the main event. Steiner, Goldberg, Nash, as I just mentioned, and none clicked enough to permanently unseat Triple H until Batista and Cena were finally ready. So while the reign was a ratings killer, this is a fact, it isn't entirely Hunter's fault. But yeah, this brings me to my final point. Was Triple H's reign of terror truly as bad as people say, both creatively and statistically? Well, the evidence strongly suggests yes. And remember, I did give credit where credit was due, but this was a really boring time for WWE. Raw's weekly TV ratings took a nosedive to multi-year lows. Live attendance softened, and pay-per-view buy rates sagged when Triple H was on top, only recovering once new stars ascended. And hey, maybe this isn't entirely on Triple H, but he's like responsible for some of it here. It's telling that from 2002 to 04, Wrestling Observer newsletter readers voted Triple H as the most overrated wrestler 3 years in a row, and even the least favorite wrestler in some of those years. In the modern day, this might not seem like a big deal, but remember that the Wrestling Observer newsletter back in the day was pretty much the internet wrestling community today. So this was a very harsh verdict from wrestling's most hardcore audience at the time. But let's wrap this up. To say Triple H was never the guy is a little bit of a reach, but it also isn't far off. He really didn't even touch Cena in terms of popularity, let alone The Rock or Austin. However, Triple H is undeniably a major part of WWE history, and was a main eventer at many points in his career, especially in the late 90s. Again though, Triple H never became the crossover megastar that WWE's promotional machine made him out to be. And honestly, it's okay because Triple H did help carry WWE through a very challenging time. He was one of the only reliable veterans left on Raw, and took on a heavy load as a performer. He also eventually did the right thing by putting over new stars when the stage was finally set. In the long run, WWE survived that slump and entered a new era, the Cena and Batista era, which saw business stabilize and improve. Triple H can legitimately claim part of the credit for mentoring and grooming some of the talent that led to that turnaround. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. I hope you guys seen that this wasn't just like a hit piece on Triple H. I tried to be very fair in this video. Subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. I use no AI in my content, just saying. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.